Imagine being so desperate that you decide to steal an entire airplane. This isn't a Hollywood action movie with a cool hero. It is a story about real, broken people. They just wanted a chance to breathe and to finally survive. Our story begins in the hot, dusty lands of southwest Iran. The devastating war ended years ago, but the ruins are still there. The buildings are broken, the factories are closed, and the soil is completely dry. This is where we meet Ghasem. He is a proud man, but his spirit is completely crushed. He looks at his children and sees hunger. He looks at his future and sees absolutely nothing. Every single day is a brutal battle just to find a piece of bread. Ghasem feels like a ghost trapped in a dying town. He has tried everything to find a normal job. He has begged, he has traveled, and he has failed. The system does not care about a poor veteran with big dreams. So, Ghasem forms a dark, dangerous plan in his mind. He decides that if the land will not give him life, he will take to the sky. He secretly buys tickets for a small, domestic commercial flight. But Ghasem cannot leave his big, extended family behind. He tells them a beautiful, comforting lie. He says he found great jobs for everyone in a distant city. He says a wealthy businessman is waiting to hire them all. The family is filled with sudden, joyful hope. They pack their entire lives into a few old suitcases. They sell their last remaining belongings to afford the trip. They think they are traveling to a bright, shiny new future. Only one person knows the terrifying truth. His beautiful, pregnant wife, Nargis. She knows Ghasem does not have a job waiting for them. She knows he bought a weapon on the black market. Nargis is absolutely paralyzed by fear. She begs him to change his mind in secret. But Ghasem looks at her with wild, desperate eyes. He tells her this is their absolute last chance to survive. The family arrives at the small airport. The security is relaxed because it is just a short, local flight. Ghasem hides the small gun carefully beneath his thick clothes. His heart is beating like a heavy drum in his chest. Every step toward the airplane feels like walking toward a cliff. Nargis walks beside him, holding her pregnant belly. She feels the heavy weight of the secret crushing her soul. They finally board the old, noisy twin-engine plane. The cabin is small, cramped, and smells like cheap fuel. The family members sit together, laughing and sharing simple snacks. They talk about the nice houses they will buy soon. They talk about the schools the children will finally attend. Ghasem listens to their happy voices and feels a deep, painful guilt. The engines roar to life with a loud, vibrating whine. The plane speeds down the runway and lifts into the air. Ghasem watches the dry, ruined earth disappear below the clouds. He knows there is no turning back anymore. The sky is a one-way road for his desperate family. He checks his watch, the flight is only supposed to last 1 hour. As the plane reaches its cruising altitude, the atmosphere changes. Ghasem stands up from his seat, wiping sweat from his forehead. He walks slowly toward the front of the passenger cabin. His cousin calls out to him, asking where he is going. Ghasem does not answer, his eyes fixed on the cockpit door. He pulls the cold, heavy metal gun from his pocket. He turns around and faces the crowded cabin. He screams at the top of his lungs for everyone to freeze. The joyful talking instantly stops, replaced by a cold, dead silence. Then, the children realize what is happening and begin to scream. The grandmother starts praying out loud, her voice shaking violently. The family looks at Ghasem as if he is a complete stranger. The flight security guard, an officer in plain clothes, stands up. He tells Ghasem to drop the weapon and think about his family. But Ghasem yells that he is doing this exactly for his family. A violent, chaotic struggle breaks out in the narrow aisle. The guard lunges forward, trying to grab Ghasem's shaking wrist. They crash against the seats, hitting the terrified passengers. Punch after punch lands in the cramped, suffocating space. Blood splatters across the white walls of the airplane cabin. Ghasem fights with the manic strength of a man with nothing to lose. The extended family members are totally frozen in absolute horror. They want to help, but they do not know who the enemy is. Is the enemy the guard, or is the enemy their own flesh and blood? With a final, desperate effort, Ghasem overpowers the bleeding guard. He binds the officer's hands tightly with a heavy leather belt. He stands over the guard, gasping heavily for a breath of air. He turns his bleeding face toward the cockpit door. He bangs on the thick wood with the butt of his gun. He orders the pilot to open up, or he will start shooting passengers. The pilot, sensing the extreme danger, slowly opens the door. Ghasem steps into the cockpit, his eyes wild and bloodshot. He points the gun directly at the pilot's trembling head. He demands that the pilot change the course immediately. He wants to fly across the Persian Gulf to a wealthy neighbor. He believes that over there, they will receive political asylum and riches. The pilot tries to explain the harsh reality of the situation. This small plane is not built for international travel. They do not have enough fuel to cross the deep, wide sea. But Ghasem refuses to listen to any technical excuses. He thinks the pilot is just lying to save his own skin. He screams that the plane must fly straight toward his imaginary paradise. Back in the cabin, the atmosphere turns into a living nightmare. The initial shock wears off, and the family's anger bubbles over. Ghasem's uncle stands up, cursing his nephew's very name. He yells that Ghasem has turned them all into dangerous terrorists. They will never be allowed to return to their beloved homeland. They are trapped in a flying prison, miles above the earth. The older relatives begin to recount their long history of suffering. They talk about how the war stole their youth and their wealth. They talk about how society pushed them to the absolute margins. The small airplane cabin becomes a microcosm of their entire country. It is filled with loud arguments, deep resentment, and broken hearts. Everyone is shouting, blaming each other for their collective misery. Nargis sits quietly in the middle of the screaming crowd. She holds her small children close to her protective chest. She can feel the stress causing sharp pains in her pregnant belly. She looks out the small window at the endless blue sky. There are no borders up here, no walls, and no passports. Yet, she has never felt more trapped in her entire life. Suddenly, the plane violently jerks to the left. The air pressure inside the small cabin begins to drop rapidly. The oxygen masks drop down from the ceiling like yellow ghosts. Panic erupts again as people scramble to put the masks on. The air becomes thin, freezing cold, and very difficult to breathe. Elderly family members begin to faint from the lack of oxygen. Inside the cockpit, Ghasem is also struggling to breathe. The pilot points to the dashboard, where red lights are flashing wildly. The fuel gauges are dropping faster than anyone anticipated. The pilot tells Ghasem they are flying at a dangerously low altitude. The heavy winds are pushing the plane back, burning through the fuel. They will never make it across the border, they are going to crash. Ghasem stares at the flashing red lights in utter disbelief. He thought he had planned everything out so perfectly. He thought the sky would be his ultimate path to freedom. Instead, the sky is turning into a massive, open graveyard. He looks back into the cabin through the open cockpit door. He sees his family gasping for air, weeping, and holding each other. Nargis drags herself up and walks into the cramped cockpit. She looks at her husband, her eyes filled with a deep, profound sadness. She does not yell at him, she does not curse his name. She gently places his rough hand onto her swollen, pregnant belly. She asks him if this is the inheritance he wants for their child. A violent death in a stolen plane, far away from home. Ghasem looks at his wife, and the anger completely leaves his body. The wild, dangerous illusion of escape finally shatters into pieces. He realizes you cannot fly away from your own tragic reality. He realizes that his poverty and pain traveled up into the sky with him. The gun feels incredibly heavy and useless in his trembling hand. He slowly lowers the weapon, letting it drop to the floor. The pilot takes full control of the shaking airplane once again. He flips switches desperately, trying to stabilize the failing engines. He looks out the front windshield, searching for any flat piece of land. Below them is nothing but a barren, rocky desert landscape. There are no airports, no runways, and absolutely no safety nets. The engines give a final, loud sputter, and then they completely die. The sudden silence inside the plane is more terrifying than the noise. The only sound left is the wind rushing past the metal body. The pilot tells everyone to brace themselves for a hard impact. Family members hold hands across the narrow aisle, closing their eyes. They forgive each other for the angry words spoken just minutes ago. They prepare to meet their final, tragic end together as one. The plane rushes down toward the hard, unyielding desert floor. It hits the ground with a deafening, metallic scream of ripping iron. The wings tear off as the fuselage slides wildly through the dirt. Dust and smoke fill the air, blinding everyone inside. After what feels like an eternity, the motion finally stops. The broken body of the airplane rests silently in the sand. Miraculously, coughing voices begin to rise from the thick smoke. One by one, the family members realize they are still alive. They help each other crawl out through the ripped metal doors. They step out onto the hot, dry desert sand. They look around and realize they are still in their own country. They never crossed the border, they never escaped their harsh lives. Ghasem crawls out last, his face covered in blood and dark soot. He falls to his knees on the burning, dry earth. He looks at his family, who are safe, but completely broken. In the far distance, the sound of police sirens begins to echo. The authorities are coming to arrest the desperate hijacker. Nargis walks over and stands silently by her husband's side. She does not leave him, even though he ruined everything. They wanted to fly high above their deep, endless misery. But they learned the hard way that some heights are just too low.